All right, today's video, we're talking about why you should record your own samples, even if you don't have fancy equipment. Hey, I'm Schanno Johnson, and if you don't know me, I'm a musician, composer, producer, and I make videos about all that fun stuff, music composition, music production. So make sure you hit that subscribe button to see videos like this in the future. So today's video is gonna be about why you should record your own samples for your music, even if you don't have the best equipment to do so. Let's get into it. So reason number one why you should record your own samples, even if you don't have fancy equipment, is it makes your music more unique. So if you're using the same samples everybody else is using, you're using all of the exact same sounds, you're not changing them at all, you're not editing them at all, your music is going to sound very similar to everybody else. And maybe that's what you want, then go for it. This video isn't for you, but if you want your sound to be a little more unique, you want to have your own voice, record your own samples. That's what you want to do. It'll add a uniqueness because, well, the samples are literally unique, right? You don't have to worry about them being the same as somebody else's sound because they're literally not. You kind of notice this with film scoring music, not necessarily big budget film scoring music, but some composers that are not at that level yet. They're not quite able to afford recording their own musicians, or maybe they don't have the budget to, or maybe they don't want to because the budget is already pretty low and then they won't have that much money afterwards. But you'll notice this because if people use all the same sample libraries, and there's a limited number of sample libraries that are useful, then you get this same similar sound. Everything kind of starts to sound the same, especially if you're using then the same chords and the same ideas and all of this other stuff, right? You're using essentially the same orchestra to play the same ideas as somebody else, so it'll sound the same. That's just what happens. So you got to figure out a way, how can I get around that? A lot of people will record themselves playing. They'll play something on an instrument that they play that other people don't play, or they record their own samples. Reason number two is that it adds flavor. So I know this sounds very similar to reason number one, but it adds a uniqueness and a flavor to your own sound that maybe you didn't have before. So let's say you're recording, I don't know, an electronic song, and you record yourself maybe hitting a book or closing a book, and you use that as part of your snare drum and part of your bass drum. That'll add a different flavor to your bass drum and snare drum that wasn't there before, that maybe you didn't think you could add, or you hadn't thought to add. Maybe you'll do something else. You'll add, like, for example, Andrew Huang does this all the time. He'll add in samples of like rice being hit or shaken as a shaker, or hit with a spoon as a snare drum or something. It'll add a flavor and a uniqueness to your music that wasn't there before. So it can give you ideas, and it can give it some more spice, a little more flavor to your music that maybe you didn't have. So let's get into some equipment that we can use that is still okay to do this with. First thing is a mic. Sure, you can use a mic. I have an SM57 that I have used to record lots of samples. I have this Zoom H4n recorder that I'm using right now to talk into that I've also used to record lots of stuff, especially if it's outside because it's, well, portable. I don't need to have a cable. You could also use your laptop microphone. You could get a condenser microphone like the SM7B. That's a pretty common one. You could get something else like the AT2020 or AT4040. Both common microphones from Audio-Technica. Lots of those microphones are great. If you can afford them, get it, use it. If you have something else already, use that. Last thing is your laptop microphone. Your laptop has a microphone and you can use it. It might not sound like the quality of this, but if you go on a trip to your grandparents' house for Christmas and you didn't bring this along, then you could use your laptop microphone. Is that a personal story? Yeah, because for my album Starshine, go listen to the song Did Somebody Ring the Doorbell? Which is the proper way to pronounce that song. Just got to get that out there. If you listen to that song, it's a recording of my grandma's doorbell because it had this really cool thunk sound and then a tail afterwards, and I thought it sounded really cool, and I wanted to record it because I wasn't sure when I was going to be out there again, and I wanted to make sure I had a recording of it, and I wanted to use it. So I pulled out my laptop, which at the time was a MacBook Pro, and I held it up to the speaker of the doorbell, and she pressed it, and I recorded it. So that's what I did. Go listen to the song. You can't really tell that it was recorded on a MacBook, and I mangled and mashed the sample enough where it doesn't really matter if it was, because you wouldn't be able to tell in the end anyways. But that's what you want to do. You could use that sample that was recorded with these conditions that weren't the best and make it sound good, because you know how to make it sound good. And it'll add a uniqueness that wasn't there before. So maybe the fact that it doesn't sound super pristine is what makes it unique, right? Crazy thing to think about. So I have an EP called Starshine that all of the samples on that were recorded on a MacBook Pro microphone. So all of them were recorded on a MacBook Pro microphone, like the built-in webcam microphone from 2012 or whatever. So old piece of equipment, old computer, not a great quality microphone, but it works. And that's what I had at the time, and that's what I wanted to use. So that's what I used, and they sound fine. The songs are okay. The samples sound fine. Right? Because what matters is how you use that sample, not the specifics of how the sample was recorded. So go check out that album. I did add an 808 and 606 or something snare so that they do sound like more traditional bass drum and snare drum sounds, but all the other instruments, all the other samples, all the other sounds are from that one recording that I did. Another thing about using microphones that aren't great: I have put together a number of virtual choirs with my students singing, and they just had an iPad or a laptop or whatever. None of them had fancy microphones, but it didn't matter. The recording sounded fine because I put them all together and I edited them together, and I knew how to make them sound better. So again, you can use that. I mean, look at Eric Whitaker's recordings, Eric Whitaker's virtual choirs. A lot of his are people recording themselves on a laptop microphone. Go check out his first two for Luke's Arumkoi and Sleep. Both of those virtual choirs by Eric Whitaker were recorded mostly of people on laptop microphones. Because at the time, I mean, it was a number of years ago, at the time it wasn't super common for people to have lots of equipment, and the people that participated didn't have that equipment. But go listen to how sick those recordings sound, because I think those will convince you that how you use the sample and how you use the recording is more important than the actual quality of the recording itself. So go listen to Eric Whitaker's first two virtual choirs. Luke's Arumkoi, I think, is number 1, and then Sleep is number 2. So the main thing that I want you to get out of this video is use what you have. That's it. That's all it is. Use what you got. Whatever you have is what you should use. If you're making music on a laptop and you want to record a cool sound that you have, record it. That's it. Just use that. You don't need to wait until you have a fancy SM7B, or you don't need to have an AT4040. You don't need to have these fancy microphones. Get them when you can, but use what you have right now, because that matters more than waiting and then using this other fancy piece of equipment. Okay, final thing is some advice for how to set up a recording when you're doing samples. Ideally, what you want to do is record something where there isn't much reverb and there isn't much noise. Those are the main things. That's kind of it, right? You don't want much reverb because you want to be able to control that later on in the mix, especially if you're putting it in with other recordings. You want to be able to control the reverb so everything sounds like it's coming from the same room, rather than having like one sample sound like it's coming from one room, one sample sound like it's coming from another room. Make sure that there isn't much reverberation in the room, and make sure it's fairly dead. Often this means that you have stuff on the walls, so you might have to go around and snap or clap. I can't do that because I'm holding this, but go around and clap or snap in whatever rooms you have, if you can carry both things around, and see which one has the most dead sound. Meaning, when you clap, do you hear a long tail, or do you hear a short tail and it's just clap, that's it? Often this will mean closets are a pretty alright place to look and record stuff. because there's all this stuff in there that will absorb the sound, there won't be much reverb. One thing you can do is check out #Huang Mobile Studio. Andrew Huang, who's one of my favorite producers, he will take pictures of him recording stuff in hotel rooms, because he'll basically set up like a pillow fort with sheets and pillows from the hotel room so that he can record vocals. And they sound great because he's using what he has and he knows how to do it. So find somewhere like that. Make a tent with pillows and sheets if you want to. Something else to look for is make sure that it's fairly quiet. You don't want stuff like an AC unit or a refrigerator, or like somebody driving by in their car, or somebody doing construction outside when you're recording something. You want it to be fairly quiet. Find somewhere where the noise level is really low. Think library level volume. That's ideal, because there isn't much noise other than that sound. Because remember, whatever you're recording, the microphone will pick up all of the noise. It'll pick up everything. It won't distinguish between what you want to record and what other stuff is going on. So if there's some other noise going on, maybe wait, go somewhere else, find somewhere else to record, or wait a little bit until that noise is gone. All right, that's it for this video. I hope you found it useful. I hope you learned something about music. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and as always, thank you for watching. See you next time. Peace.